Welcome back to the deep dive. We often explore figures whose actions are, well, deeply disturbing. They really push the limits of what you might imagine.
Absolutely.
And today, we're looking at John George Haigh. He's got a name that's tied to this really infamous, chilling nickname, the acid bath murderer.
Yeah, that phrase alone, it just immediately gives you this awful picture, doesn't it?
It really does.
And Hayes' whole approach, his modus operandi,
Yeah.
it was incredibly audacious, cold-blooded, killing for profit, basically.
And then the method.
Right. Systematically dissolving his victims' bodies in, concentrated sulfuric acid. He genuinely seemed to believe he could just erase them completely. So our goal here in this deep dive is to try and get past just the shock value, the sensational headlines. We want to understand, the whole picture. Hayes' very strange background, how his criminal thinking evolved.
The specific details of the method, which are obviously quite horrific, definitely. And also, critically, the sort of legal and forensic consequences. His case actually forced the justice system to confront some new problems.
It really did. It wasn't just about what he did, but how his actions, as monstrous as they were, created these new challenges for finding truth and delivering justice.
Okay, so let's start digging into Hayes' story, right from the beginning. Where did he come from?
Well, what's really striking about Haigh is how different his early life seems compared to, well, where he ended up.
Right.
He was born in Stamford, Lincolnshire, but grew up mainly in Outwood, Yorkshire. His parents were part of the Plymouth Brethren.
Oh, okay. That's a very conservative Protestant group, isn't it?
Extremely. And he was an only child, which suggests a very, very strict, maybe even insular kind of upbringing.
But despite that rigidity, he wasn't, without talent. He was good at the piano.
Yeah.
Liked classical music.
Yeah, quite accomplished, apparently. He even got a scholarship to Queen Elizabeth Grammar School, was a choir boy at Wakefield Cathedral. Seems quite respectable on the surface.
But then there are his own claims about these religious nightmares he had as a kid. Recurring ones.
Exactly. That's the contrast, isn't it? The gifted student, the choir boy, versus this troubled inner life he described.
What do you make of that early split?
It's hard to say for sure, but it hints at something deeper, doesn't it? A conflict, maybe? While he was achieving things outwardly, those nightmares suggest some kind of psychological complexity brewing underneath, maybe even a pathology starting early.
And his first actual crimes weren't violent, were they? It was more like fraud.
Right. His first steps into, let's say, overt crime were more about deception. He worked various jobs, motor engineering, insurance, advertising, but got fired when he was just 21.
What for?
Suspected theft from a cash box. And that seemed to set him off, really. He quickly moved on to forging car documents.
So these early acts, they weren't just youthful mistakes then. It sounds more like a pattern starting.
I think so. It wasn't just about committing a crime. It was about building a life based on lies, on manipulation, instead of, honest work. That mindset seems to have been forming long before murder was even on the table.
And while his work life was heading down this path of fraud,
Yeah.
what about his personal life? Did that spiral too? His marriage?
Oh, completely. His personal life really mirrored the chaos. He got married in 1934 to Beatrice Betty Hamer.
Okay.
But it didn't last long at all. She actually gave birth to their daughter while Haigh was already in prison for fraud.
Wow.
Yeah. Betty eventually put the baby up for adoption and just left him. And after that public shame, his own family apparently cut him off completely.
So you see this trajectory.
Yeah.
He's struggling with work, struggling with relationships, and just leaning more and more into deception.
Pretty much. Deception became his go-to way of operating in the world.
And that pattern just got worse, didn't it? By 1936, he's in London, working as a chauffeur.
Yeah, for a man named William McSwan, who owned amusement arcades and was quite wealthy. But even with a job, Haigh couldn't stop the scams.
What kind of scams then?
Well, he started impersonating a solicitor, selling fake stock shares supposedly from estates of people who died. The nerve of it is quite something.
Absolutely. And he kept getting caught, right? Prison sentences.
Multiple times. It shows a man who just seemed incapable of or uninterested in staying straight. But it was actually in prison that his thinking took a really dark turn.
How so?
This is crucial. He apparently started thinking about his past frauds and decided his big mistake was leaving victims alive, people who could point the finger at him.
Right? Witnesses.
Exactly. And it was around this time he learned about that French murderer, Georges Alexandre Sarret.
The one who also used acid.
That's the one. For Haigh, this wasn't just about getting rid of a body. It was about, obliterating the evidence, making the crime itself disappear, in theory.
So he didn't just think about it. He actually started testing it.
Yes. This is where it gets really chillingly methodical. He moved from the idea to actual experiments.
What does he do?
He got hold of some field mice, and he timed how long it took for their bodies to dissolve in concentrated sulfuric acid.
And the result?
He figured out it took only about 30 minutes, half an hour, for a mouse body to basically liquefy.
That level of cold, calculated testing. It's something else.
It really is. It wasn't just morbid curiosity. It was practical research for him. This marks the point where his, criminal fantasy met a kind of twisted scientific approach. He was trying to engineer the perfect murder.
One that couldn't be proven.
Exactly. By destroying the primary evidence, the body itself, he thought he could make it fundamentally unprovable. That was the challenge he was setting for the justice system.
So he has the method, the theory. Now he needs the opportunity. Which brings us back to William McSwan.
Right. After getting out of prison again in 1943, Haig's working as an accountant, and purely by chance, he bumps into his old boss, McSwan, in a pub in Kensington.
And McSwan introduces him to his parents.
Donald and Amy McSwan. And Haigh, always the opportunist, sees their comfortable lifestyle, their properties, and, well, envy kicks in immediately.
A fateful meeting, then.
Extremely. Because on September 6, 1944, William McSwan vanished. Haigh later confessed what happened.
What did he say?
He lured William to a basement workshop he'd rented on Gloucester Road, hit him over the head with a lead pipe,
And then?
put his body into a big 40-gallon drum filled with concentrated sulfuric acid, left it for 2 days.
2 days.
Yeah. Then he poured what was left, mostly sludge, presumably down a manhole. He was convinced he'd erased every trace. The sheer nerve of that first act is unnerving.
And the deception afterwards was just as bold, telling the parents their son was hiding out in Scotland.
Yep. Made up a story about avoiding military service. He even started managing their properties, collecting rent, moved into William's house. He really embedded himself in their lives.
But the parents must have gotten worried eventually, when the war ended and William still wasn't back.
They did. And that anxiety, unfortunately for them, gave Haigh his next opportunity. On July 2nd, 1945, he told Donald and Amy that William was back for a surprise visit.
And lured them to the same basement.
Same Gloucester Road basement. He killed them both there, blows to the head, just like their son, and disposed of them in the same way, acid baths.
The calculation is just horrifying. And the profit.
Significant. He forged documents, sold their properties, stole their pension checks, got about £8,000, which, as you said, is a huge amount back then, maybe £440,000 today.
Wow.
And with that money, he checked into the Onslow Court Hotel in Kensington, a pretty posh place, living the life he wanted, funded by murder.
It's just staggering. The meticulous planning, the disposal moving right into their lives. Does this show him getting more confident or maybe just more detached?
I think it has to be both, doesn't it? Each time he got away with it, it must have reinforced his belief that the acid method was foolproof, and that likely made him even more detached, seeing people purely as obstacles or, sources of cash.
But that cash didn't last forever, did it? He had a gambling problem.
A big one. By 1947, just a couple of years later, the money from the McSwans was running low thanks to his gambling, so he needed new funds and new victims.
Which led him to the Hendersons, Archibald and Rose.
Exactly. Another wealthy couple he targeted. He pretended he was interested in buying a house they were selling, got invited to their flat for a party.
And that's when he's told again.
Yes. While he was there, apparently just mingling at their housewarming, he pocketed Archibald Henderson's revolver, a .38 Webley.
Stealing the murder weapon from the victim beforehand. What does that tell us?
It just screams opportunism, doesn't it? And avoiding any personal expense or record of buying a weapon, it was just easier, safer for him to take it when he saw the chance. Purely transactional thinking.
So he has the weapon. What next?
Preparations. He rented a new place, a small workshop this time, at 2 Leopold Road in Crawley, down in West Sussex. Moved his drums and his acid supplies there, setting the stage again.
For the Hendersons.
Yes. On February 12, 1948, he got Archibald Henderson to come to the workshop. Some false reason, business perhaps. Once there, he shot him in the head with his own stolen revolver.
And then Rose.
Chillingly efficient. He contacted Rose, told her Archibald had suddenly become ill at the workshop and she needed to come right away.
And when she got there?
He shot her too. Disposed of both bodies in the acid drums, just like the McSwans.
And then straight back to profit.
Immediately. Forged a letter, sold off all their possessions, got another 8,000 pounds or so. He even kept their car and their dog for a while. The lack of any empathy is just total, purely focused on the money and covering his tracks.
Which brings us to the final victim, Olive Durand Deacon.
His neighbor, in fact. She was 69, a wealthy widow, also living at the Onslow Court Hotel.
And there's that strange detail about artificial fingernails.
Yeah, quite bizarre. Haigh, who was pretending to be an engineer or inventor type by this point, apparently overheard her talking to friends about an idea she had for making artificial fingernails.
And he saw his chance.
He did. On February 18th, 1949, he invited her to his workshop in Crawley, saying he could help with her invention.
The Leopold Road Workshop again.
The same one. Once she was inside, he shot her in the back of the neck. Used the same revolver he'd stolen from Archibald Henderson.
In the same routine. Valuables, acid bath.
Stripped her of her valuables famously. Her Persian lamb coat was one item and put her body into the acid. But this time, things went wrong for Haigh.
What happened? What finally tripped him up?
Well, 2 days later, Mrs. Durand Deacon had a friend, Constance Lane, who got worried when she didn't show up for lunch. She reported her missing.
And the police got involved.
Right. Detectives started looking into Haigh, partly because he was acting suspiciously, and quickly found his criminal record. Theft, fraud. It raised red flags.
So they searched the workshop in Crawley.
They did. And this is where Haigh's meticulous planning finally failed him. It came down to plumbing, essentially.
Plumbing? How so?
Unlike the Gloucester Road basement, the workshop at Leopold Road didn't have a FLIR drain. He couldn't just wash the remains down the sewer.
So what did he do with the sludge?
He had to dump it outside, pour the acidic sludge and remaining solids onto a pile of rubble behind the workshop. And that was the mistake.
Because the police found it.
Because the pathologist, Dr. Keith Simpson, meticulously investigated that rubble pile. What his team found there was absolutely crucial.
What did they find? After the acid.
It was incredible forensic work, really. They recovered about 28 pounds of human body fat, part of a human foot, some human gallstones.
Identifiable human remains?
Yes. And the clincher.
Huh?
Part of a plastic denture.
A denture.
Yes. And during the trial, Olive Durand Deacon's own dentist was able to positively identify it as hers. That piece of plastic survived the acid.
So much for no body, no conviction.
Exactly. That piece of denture completely destroyed Haigh's core belief. It was concrete proof linking him directly to a missing person presumed murdered.
And when the police questioned him, knowing they had this evidence, did he confess?
He did, but in a very strange way. He apparently started the conversation with Detective Inspector Albert Webb by asking about Broadmoor.
The high-security psychiatric hospital.
That's right. He asked Webb, "Tell me, frankly, what are the chances of anybody being released from Broadmoor?" Almost testing the waters for an insanity plea from the start.
And then he admitted it.
When Webb couldn't really answer that, Haigh apparently said something like, "Well, if I told you the truth, you would not believe me. It sounds too fantastic." And then he just laid it all out.
Killing the McSwans, the Hendersons, Mrs. Durand Deacon.
Yes. And he even threw in claims about 3 other victims they couldn't substantiate. A young man named Max, a girl from Eastbourne, a woman from Hammersmith. Whether those were true or just bravado, who knows? But it showed his state of mind. Utterly detached, almost boasting.
Which leads us to the trial. His whole defense rested on that mistaken idea about the bodies, didn't it?
Fundamentally, he genuinely seemed to believe that without intact bodies, he couldn't be convicted of murder. It's a fascinating look into how a mind, so meticulous in one way, could be so wrong about the law and the potential of science.
A real aha moment seeing that flawed logic.
Definitely. And then, to try and save himself, he went with the insanity plea.
Claiming he drank his victim's blood and had those blood-obsessed dreams since childhood.
Yes, including that very vivid, elaborate dream he described after a car crash in 1944. About a forest of crucifixes turning into trees dripping blood, and a figure offering him a cup of blood, trying to paint a picture of lifelong compulsion.
How did the prosecution counter that?
Sir Hartley Shawcross, for the prosecution, just focused on the facts. The clear financial motive for each murder, the careful planning, the systematic disposal. Arguing it pointed clearly to malice aforethought. premeditated murder for gain, not uncontrollable insanity.
And the defense, what was their main argument?
Sir David Maxwell Fyfe, defending Haigh, brought in psychiatric experts like Dr. Henry Yellowlees. He described Haigh as having a paranoid constitution and noted his, quote, absolute callous, cheerful, bland, and almost friendly indifference to the horrific crimes he'd admitted, trying to show he was fundamentally abnormal, detached from reality.
But the jury didn't buy the insanity plea.
Not for a second. They were out for only a few minutes. Found him guilty. The forensic evidence, especially that denture, was just too strong.
And the sentence.
Mr. Justice Humphreys sentenced him to death. John George Haigh was hanged on August 10, 1949, by Albert Pierrepoint, the famous executioner.
The case got huge media attention, obviously. But didn't it also have some unexpected legal fallout for the newspapers?
It really did. This is a fascinating side note. The Daily Mirror newspaper got into serious trouble.
How so?
Their editor, Sylvester Bolam, published headlines calling Haigh a murderer while the trial was still going on, before the verdict.
Contempt of court.
Exactly. Bolam was actually sentenced to 3 months in prison for it, and the paper was fined £10,000, which was a massive sum then. It was a landmark ruling.
Why was it so significant?
It really cemented the principle of sub judice in the UK, that the media has to be incredibly careful not to prejudice a trial while it's in progress. It reinforced innocent until proven guilty, even for someone like Haigh who had confessed, and where the evidence seemed overwhelming, a really important legal legacy from such a grim case.
That's incredible. It really shaped how the media covers crime today. And the story itself, Hay's story, it keeps popping up in culture, doesn't it? Films, TV dramas.
Absolutely. There was a film called Obsession that got delayed because its plot was too similar. Hitchcock planned a film, Kaleidoscope, based on him, but never made it. More recently, the ITV drama A is for Acid, with Martin Clunes as Haigh, plays audio dramas. He remains this figure of dark fascination.
So wrapping this up, what are the key things we take away from Hay's story?
I think it's the combination, really. The cold, calculated nature of his crimes, the sheer nerve of his method, the way he challenged forensic science at the time, and his fundamental miscalculation about being able to erase his crimes completely.
His belief that dissolving the body meant no proof.
Right. It proved tragically wrong, thanks to that crucial forensic work. But it also, ironically, pushed forensic science forward. His attempt to beat the system ultimately helped strengthen it.
So a final thought for our listeners then. Hay's assumption about acid was wrong, beaten by the science of his day. It makes you wonder, though, in our world, with technology constantly advancing, what new, maybe equally bold assumptions might criminals be making right now about how to get away with things?
That's a really chilling thought, isn't it? It highlights that the contest between crime and detection is always evolving. Criminals adapt, science adapts. It's a constant push and pull.
A powerful reminder indeed. Thank you for taking us through this very dark but fascinating case.
Thank you.
And thank you for joining us on the Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.